it's me, Jocelyn. I really am very appreciative to those of you who contributed to help bring me back on the air. It really does mean a lot, and I'll say more about that later. But let's do the video. So if you are a Beach Boys fan, or even if you're not a Beach Boys fan, you probably know that the sounds you just heard are the introduction to Wouldn't It Be Nice? And if you've been a Beach Boys fan for any amount of time, you may know that there's been a lot of confusion and debate about what instrument or instruments created the sound that makes up the introduction to that song. If you do a Google search on like what instrument played the introduction to Wouldn't It Be Nice?, you will get all kinds of answers from all kinds of different people. People say it's a harp, it's a hammered dulcimer. I think the official Stack of Tracks sheet music said it was an electric piano. People think it's a calliope. I think even Carl maybe said it was a harp. I think Tom Petty thought it was a harp. But the point is, a lot of people have guessed a lot of different instruments. And there are reasons for why it's so hard to pin down, which I'll get into later. But I'm going to give away the ending now. It was a guitar. Well, it was two guitars, two 12-string guitars, possibly the Fender 12 that I'm holding here. Maybe not. We'll get into that. But exploring how this simple, common-ish instrument has created such confusion will be the subject of the video. Let's do it.
And I'm a power mower. Take.
So let's talk first about how we know it's a 12-string guitar and not something else, and then I'll get into why it sounds so strange. The short answer to how we know is the session tape. There's a fair amount of it. We can hear the noodling between takes. We know it was an instrument, an electrified instrument plugged directly into the console. There's plenty of evidence for that. So we know it wasn't a hammered dulcimer. We know it wasn't a harp out on the studio floor. We know it wasn't an electric piano. You can clearly hear that it's a picked chordophone. You know, it's pretty obvious when you listen between takes. Now, one major thing that has caused me and many others to question whether it was just a simple electric 12-string guitar is this very famous, very exotic photo of Barney Kessel playing this fancy 12-string Gibson mandolin. And it kind of filled in a nice gap. It's an exotic instrument, sounds a little different. Barney Kessel was on the intro. Maybe it was this. This theory was bolstered by Brian Wilson saying that's what it was in his recent autobiography. It wasn't, though, and here's how we know. First of all, mandolins are typically an acoustic instrument, mic'd up, and the instrument playing on the intro to Wouldn't It Be Nice is not mic'd up, it's direct into the board, meaning it had to be electrified via a pickup. It's not to say that mandolins can't and didn't have pickups that were detachable. You could stick them to the body of the instrument with some putty. But it's just one more step in the chain that makes it unlikely. But the real damning evidence against the Wouldn't It Be Nice introduction instrument being a Gibson 12-string guitar is actually from one of my favorite tools to figure out what's going on in records, is tuning between takes. So guitar players know that most of the time guitars are tuned EAD, GBE. Now electric 12 strings are tuned with the two strings in one course to the same note, Sometimes they're unison, like in the top two, where they're both tuned to the same E or the same B. Or then below that, they're in octaves. So the G, D, A, and E strings are all in octaves. Now, an electric, or the 12-string mandolin that Barney owned was presumably tuned like a 12-string guitar, only an octave up. So that's like if I put a capo or just put my finger here at the 12th fret. It'd be like, well, if I had a little better finger tension, it'd be like that. So everything is much higher because the mandolin is a shorter instrument and the strings are not vibrating as long. So for a while I thought maybe Barney had tuned the whole thing down because during one of the between take sessions he tunes an open G. You can hear him tuning it up. And that note just doesn't exist on a higher tuned mandolin. See, it's too high. You can still hit that note, but it's not an open string, and Barney's tuning to an open string. That's what you do. So, either it's just standard 12-string electric guitar, or Barney's special mandolin tuned down all the strings in octave and electrified. And again, not to say that Brian Wilson wouldn't do that. I suspect he would. I just don't think he did. And I will now show you the sound aspects of this puzzle. And I think we're going to get close enough with the guitar that we'll realize that the electric mandolin, or the 12-string mandolin, isn't necessary to make that sound, and ergo, it probably was an electric 12-string guitar. Boom. Alright, so I'm just going to start by playing the part into my computer with no effects or anything, just so you can see what it started off sounding like. Then I'll slowly start adding components of a 1966 Virtual Studio, and we'll end up pretty close to the iconic sound. You're going to kind of see how it was put together. So here it is, just straight into the computer. There it is. Sounds pretty boring, right? Of course, it helps to have the second part added in, so let's do that now. It all starts with the guitar itself, and while we can't know exactly what was used, we can make some good guesses. It very well could have been a Fender 12-string, like I have, and I'm using for this recording. But my guess is that it was a Danelectro Belzuki. The reason I think this is twofold. First, the Belzuki was one of the first commercially available electric 12-strings out there, and Barney Kessel, being a kind of old-school recording guy, naturally would have been among the first to adopt. He's on record as being one of the first people to play an electric acoustic 12-string, and I have no doubt that he would have leapt at the opportunity to get a true electric 12-string. And once he found something that worked, there'd be no reason to get a new one. And the Belzuki came out several years before the Fender 12. Another reason I think that it was the Belzuki is because the early Belzukis had one pickup, and it was in the neck position, which is a naturally sort of woodier, throatier sound. And that's not necessarily what you think of when you think of Wouldn't It Be Nice, but it's exactly that natural woodiness that means that they had to compensate with EQ to get the sound that Brian was after, that metallic, trebly sound. And so I think it's the combination of a naturally woodier sounding pickup with the necessary fairly extreme EQ to get the metallic sound that actually creates the sonic signature of the track. So I'm going to start by playing a clip of the intro where I've used the bridge pickup of my Fender 12 so you can hear what that sounds like. And then I'll play the neck pickup so you can hear the difference. And now here's the neck pickup. So I think you can hear how when you switch to the neck pickup, the guitar does take on a little woodier tone, something more like you could imagine coming from an electrified 12-string mandolin. But now let's hear that sound with a preamp and EQ applied like you would have heard in Gold Star circa 1966. I'm using an emulation of the Bill Putnam 610 input module. I'm using the 610B because that EQ section looks more like the EQ available to Gold Star's engineers at the time, based on my research and what Larry Levine has said. So I'm boosting 9 decibels at 10K. Let's hear what that sounds like. So there you can hear how that woody character of the neck pickup takes on a little bit more of a metallic trebly sound when we put a little EQ on it and drive it a little bit through the preamp. Now, let's take that basic sound and start adding some different reverbs to it, and then I think you really hear it take on the character of the classic sound of the actual introduction. So here, let's start with a spring reverb, more like what you'd find in a guitar amp rather than a chamber. That sounds pretty good, but it's a little brittle and driven to my ears and doesn't capture the spirit of the recording. Now let's try a reverb chamber. This one is an emulation of Sunset Sound's Studio 2 chamber from the very recently released plugin from IK Multimedia. To me, that really takes on more of the feeling and character of the original recording. It's a little warmer, the decay time seems to be more accurate. But here's my favorite chamber setting I've found that I feel like captures the spirit best. It's from Universal Audio's plugins, and it's an emulation of the Capitol Studio Chambers. This is number 6, using RCA 44 mics, long decay time. See what you think. Boy, I think that sounds really good. Let's hear it one more time. Now obviously I'm under no illusions that I've captured the sound perfectly, but I think this is as close as I've ever heard to somebody recreating the spirit of the original. Now I'm just going to let the bridge play so you can hear it over and over again a little more extended than the herky-jerky way that I've been doing it so far. And then I'll come back with one more twist in the saga. If you're like me and you've ever tried to play along with Beach Boys tracks, you may have noticed that it's very difficult to play along with Wouldn't It Be Nice because the track is a little flat. If you start playing along when the verse comes in on an F chord, it's not quite up to an A440F. Now I don't know the exact reason that it was slowed down and not speeded back up, but it could have been to help Brian hit the high A in full voice. Could have been a mistake. But the fact is, at some point, the tape was slowed down just a little bit and never brought back up to A equals 440 pitch. And I think that that slight slowing down, not even quite a whole semitone, also contributes to the sort of dreamy feel of the intro and certainly contributes to the strange, exotic, sonic texture. So I've slowed down a couple of the examples so you can hear that, and I think this is really as close as humanly possible to replicating the sound. And again. I think we've done it. Now I just want to take some time to thank everybody who donated to help me get this all set up again. It's really made a difference in my life. I hope that these videos make a difference in yours. And please continue to support me by watching the videos, commenting, engaging, and if you feel led, donating either at GoFundMe or supporting me on a monthly basis on my Patreon. Thank you so much, and until next time, this has been Jocelyn Hoisington.